Councillor STINTZ.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. There's not a debate unless there's two sides. So I want to tell the narrative of the other side. When this project began, as Councillor Ray indicated, it began out of a development grant to beautify Jarvis. And if you ask people what they think about Jarvis, people would say it's a functional street that could benefit from a beautification. I don't think you'd get much dispute there. And then there was an EA process and traffic study that were undertaken. And despite what Councillor Ray says, the EA process was pretty clear in its purpose. It was about improving the public realm. And actually, if you go through it, it talks about how the public realm could be accommodated in many ways. And the public realm could be improved without the addition of bike lanes. And when we talk about bike lanes, they are mentioned in the report. But they're actually, the staff go out of their way to say, because bike lanes were not part of the original scope of this environmental assessment, their implementation wasn't considered. And so the report that went to Works Committee about 3 weeks ago had an environmental assessment where bike lanes weren't being considered because they weren't part of the original scope. And in the staff report that came to the Works Committee, the staff reported that the public realm improvements were partially being funded out of this development grant, but none of the work that was being contemplated was in the 10-year capital plan. And so people who came to depute and make their voices heard at the Works Committee thought A, it was about a public realm improvement, didn't like the idea that Jarvis might be closed, didn't buy the two-minute study, didn't understand how it was going to get funded, but knew all the information they had gotten about this project was what they had read in the mainstream media. That's what they knew. And then at committee, and here today, we understand that it's actually about bike lanes. It's not actually about the 10-year capital plan, because the General Manager of Transportation has told us that whatever decision we make today, they can implement the bike lanes right away. And the public realm improvements will come at some point in the future, and probably the sidewalks won't be expanded anyway, because that space will be used for the bike lanes. And so Councillor Mahavik says, well, you know what though? That's okay. That's okay, because actually if we put bike lanes on Jarvis, it'll make the road more efficient, and you can move people quicker, because you're giving them an alternative means. But from the nearest quantitative analysis we have, when you look at Sherburne, and when you look at the number of cyclists on Jarvis right now, in the morning peak period, they total 130 bicycles. And at that same period of time, there's 27,000 cars that are on Jarvis. And there's 2 buses. And they leave between 7:15 and 8:15. And when I asked the TTC, well, are you actually planning to expand the TTC service in light of this reduction? They said no, because we don't have enough riders on the TTC to warrant a service improvement. Now we have to stop here because we don't put more buses on the road unless we have a need, and yet we're willing to put more bicycle lanes on the road even though we haven't demonstrated the need. We say on the one hand the TTC won't be expanded because there's not enough riders, and yet we know somehow that if we put these bike lanes in, the masses will come, and suddenly 27,000 cars will be replaced with bicycles? And I don't believe that's a reasonable assumption. And I don't believe this council should accept that assumption on its face. I think we should challenge that assumption, and I'm sorry that the referral didn't happen, because that's the place where we could have actually had a better analysis of this issue. And when you ask people, well, would you be willing to trade off 2 minutes of traffic for a grand boulevard? Maybe you could get some discussion around that. But if they say, are you willing to trade in an extra 2-minute commute for bike lanes, I think there's a different discussion that's taking place there. And a reasonable discussion that's grounded in the fact that our own bike plan that has gone out for consultation and been approved didn't even include a bike lane on Jarvis. And then you ask people, well, you know what, what's 2 minutes? Really? Really, what's 2 minutes? 2 minutes in the middle of January is not 2 minutes. It's probably 10 or 15 minutes. And 15 minutes in the middle of January, when the bike lanes are empty, or February, or March, or April. And you know what? What are 15 minutes? I don't know, what are 15 minutes when you're late for a doctor's appointment and then they can't see you? What's 15 minutes when you can't go pick up your kids from daycare because you can't get there at 6 o'clock because you're stuck in traffic? And they charge you $10 a minute. What does that cost? What does it cost when you're stuck in a taxi? 15 minutes when you're stuck in traffic. What's the cost of that? What's the cost of trying to get home so that you can make it home to see Johnny play baseball? What are those costs? Those costs are real, and I'll tell you, they're not 2 minutes. And it's significant, because what this is about the quality of life of the people who live and work in the city. And the reality is that we're not taking the impact on that quality of life very seriously when we just say it's just about 2 minutes. Cyclists have rights. Jarvis needs to be improved. We have the money. We've consulted. Because you know what? Putting an ad in now is not the same as actually having a fulsome consultation about changing a major roadway in our city. And cyclists, they do have rights. And we have an entire bike plan that is dedicated to serving the people who ride bikes in the city. And I need to remind this council that Jarvis was never on the bike plan. And so when council makes this decision, we need to understand exactly what we're doing, because it is not just about an environmental assessment. It's not. Because the environmental assessment studied something very differently. It was in a 10-year capital plan. And you know what? In 10 years from now, we might see all the changes from Metrolinx. We might see actually people that can actually live and work downtown and can walk. But we don't see that today. In fact, we see the opposite. We see development all along Mount Pleasant that was predicated on Jarvis being available as a downtown route. And if you go back and look at the transportation studies that were submitted for some of the Mount Pleasant developments, they will say there's minimum traffic impact because of the availability of Jarvis. And the development along Mount Pleasant and Jarvis is not yet complete, although plans have been approved.
Thank you.
Take this decision seriously. Thank you.